Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Star Wars Lads. We have a little impromptu video for you all based on some breaking news from a very credible source, Deadline, one of the major Hollywood trades, who are reporting, as you probably have seen by now, that Disney and Lucasfilm are currently working on a possible episode 10, 11, and 12 coming from writer, producer, and one-time director Simon Kinberg, who some of you may know in the Star Wars space as one of the lead producers and co-creators of Star Wars Rebels, who also wrote a lot of episodes of Rebels Season 1 and maintained a producer on that show for the entirety of its run. He also has produced movies like X-Men Days of Future Past, as well as X-Men Apocalypse, and Logan, as well as The Martian, nominated for an Oscar for producing The Martian. So this is a very accredited producer, a very big name in the producing world. When it comes to the writing, though, he hasn't had as many big writing credits when it comes to especially a project on the scale of a Star Wars 10, 11, and 12. And then, of course, recently being one of the writers on Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the new version with Donald Glover. So, Simon Kinberg, Sanak, I'm going to pass it to you. What are your thoughts on Simon Kinberg taking over as, for all we know, the first writer on episode 10, 11, and 12? And also, what do you think about the fact that Disney and Lucasfilm are currently planning on or thinking about episode 10, 11, and 12?
I mean, believe it when I see it, right? I know this is from Deadline, right? Like it should be reputable, but we've heard these kind of be broken out over the last few years for Rogue Squadron and all these other stuff, right? We've had movies announced at Star Wars Celebration that we're still not entirely sure about. But as far as like Kinberg, I think I have some confidence. I don't know just how much the development will be for him. I think if we look at him as a producer for this and being someone involved in the whole trilogy, and maybe at least providing like the structure of three whole films instead of just piecemeal like a lot of the sequel trilogy was, I think that could be good. And I think he's someone, because he's worked on Rebels, that is very much, even though it's still really well respected, it is a bit underrated no matter what, because it aired on Disney XD and a lot of the writing is definitely aimed for younger audiences than even the Clone Wars was. But there is that question, which the author of this Deadline article, Michael Fleming Jr., says he believes it's in episode 10 to 12, but then it could just be that others are disputing. No, it could be just another trilogy alongside already all these other previously announced films. And my gut is telling me it's the latter. I think we are going to get an episode 10, 11, 12. I just don't see it necessarily happening just right away. I think we have a lot of gaps to fill in, and every era, the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, they've taken time to let that stuff sit and marinate. And then the difference being they've at least done stuff in between, filling in those gaps and all that. We haven't really done that with the sequels yet. If we get a show, if we get a couple other things in the works, and then we have someone officially saying, yes, we're doing episode 10, 11, 12. Yeah, I think that would make sense. But we have to fill in the gaps first. I don't want us to be saying, the sequels, will get to it later, and then we're already moving 15, 20 years minimum into the future. I don't see it just yet. I don't see, especially with how people age in Hollywood, Daisy Ridley convincingly being 20, 30 years older, even though she did start filming in 2013 for The Force Awakens. But she still looks really great. She's still in her very early 30s, right? We don't know who else will be involved. My heart is saying it's going to be a different trilogy. And because it's a different trilogy, I don't have much confidence yet. I personally wouldn't see him being charged with something that big or massive, but a new trilogy, why not? Especially if there's chances of tying in some of these other things and fleshing out like years that we just don't know yet in the Star Wars saga, that these characters can bounce between these films while still allowing those to be standalone. Why not? Fully on board for that. But again, I'll believe it when I see it.
Episode 10, 11, and 12, I've always figured it was going to go in one of two directions. And for those of you who watch our lives consistently, which you should check out every single week, and this has been my strong feelings on it, is that 10, 11, and 12 was either going to be shoehorned into the Rey project, and we'll talk about the impact this might have on the Rey project here soon. And eventually, even though it was announced as a new Jedi Order, it might just be given the title of episode 10 to sell more tickets. The other strong possibility I felt was that they jump way into the future, almost Star Wars Legacy esque, where there's nothing really related to the Skywalkers. It's almost a completely new Skywalker, two, three, four generations removed. You could still have the ghosts of Mark Hamill or the ghost of Daisy Ridley as Rey pop up, ghost of Ben Solo, Adam Driver pop up in these movies, but it's its own unique thing. It's its own fresh start away from the baggage of what Star Wars is now. And I still personally really want that for episode 10 through 12. I think part of the reason with 7 through 9 that we had a lot of baggage is the fact that we're trying to connect so many years of storytelling, so many generations of people who love Star Wars for different reasons. I fall a little bit more in line with you that I don't necessarily know if this is 10 through 12, but if it is 10 through 12, I feel like he is writing something that is distant, that isn't connected to what's going on, because it wouldn't really make sense for the Ray project to now all of a sudden be 10, 11, 12. Or does it? Because they did lose a writer. And now we hear about this 2 weeks later that there's a new writer coming in to pin a 10, 11, 12. Did they change the narrative? Did they change the script? Did they decide, hey, this is the direction we want to go in? There's nothing about Simon Kinberg directing. And we know that amongst his pretty spectacular filmography, honestly, as a pretty big Hollywood producer, along with big blockbusters. Like he was executive producer on Deadpool and Wolverine too this summer. This one thing that he hasn't succeeded in dramatically was directing, because he directed Dark Phoenix. There were a lot of on-set problems, even though he was a producer on so many X-Men movies. So when I hear that he's writing, which I imagine would be more so a story treatment, a kind of serving as the trilogy showrunner in some ways, really leading the charge for whatever the trilogy is about, giving story ideas, helping shape the direction. We also know his connections with Dave Filoni, being the co-creator with Dave Filoni on Rebels, Dave Filoni now being the CCO of Lucasfilm. There's connection there right off the bat. Does Dave Filoni come in as a part of the creative team on this, or give his pitches, or give his ideas? Is he more likely to hire somebody like Simon Kinberg, who's already worked with? I think a lot of this just makes so much sense. And the fact that Simon Kinberg is obviously a nerd, he's worked on Star Wars, worked on Marvel, worked on X-Men, worked on so many big franchises, and with so many big directors, that, I feel like this is a kind of a smart play and a really cool play for maybe something unique, interesting, but maintains the spirit of Star Wars. So that's what my hope is. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, which I kind of mentioned, is the fact that the Rey movie did lose its writer about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. It lost Stephen Knight. Previously, it was being written by Damon Lindelof. Now it's searching for a writer, or so we think. Is there a possibility? What do you think about the possibility, Sonic, that movie not necessarily shelved, but has gotten a change in direction, where originally they thought, okay, let's make one movie. Now they're saying, hey, maybe we should try a trilogy, and maybe we should hire somebody like Simon Kinberg to be the architect of the whole thing. We know Daisy Ridley has been hyping up the movie, even though there have been a lot of problems with it behind the scenes in terms of the writer's room. Maybe she knew this was happening for months now, and we're just finding out about it now.
I mean, I love that. I think he'd do much better with a series of films. Not that I know it's kind of being pitched as a trilogy, but if you really want to, you can be like, this is a trilogy with the HBO level Disney Plus show tying in with a lot of supporting characters, an animated show, yeah, why not? New Jedi Order was extremely ambitious as a book series, but if you could do this at that scale, at that grandness, going all in, I'd love that. I mean, yeah, like you said, she has been excited about what she said most recently. Before, it was almost like, I'm going through the motions. I just have to say this. This is my repeat answer. You don't have that sort of confidence after losing a second writer, right? And who knows, maybe what they were writing is now kind of being piecemealed out, and then now we're having Kinberg kind of bringing in some more new elements and then making that into a proper trilogy. Maybe it felt like there were just too many competing ideas for one film, even though these were great ideas. Maybe bringing John Boyega, since he's made a Comic Con recent appearance as well, right? Like too many things going on for one singular film, and they're like, this needs to be bigger. And I think for a Jedi Order film, the stakes will be relatively lower. I don't think we're gonna get a Yuzan Vong out of this, but I think we can get some really cool things about like the Jedi kind of leading uprisings, freeing parts of the galaxy. We could see just different Jedi take leads for like huge swaths of films. I think there is a limit to a page kind of being a minute of the screen time, stuff like that. Like you have to really consider that. And I think if you're putting in all these new characters, new ideas, new concepts, no, it wasn't going to work out. You can't just elongate the movie to 3 hours. There's some practical budget realities and attention spans and everything going on here. So this is being expanded out. If she's known for months, if this is what she's been hyping up, and maybe Kinberg's maybe finally assembled the pieces in place for Lindelof's writing to shine, for Stephen Knight's writing to shine, for Charmin to really be able to focus on the characters, direction of the story, what they're trying to do with Ray now as her own character. Why not? I would be excited for that. I would prefer that over a 10, 11, 12 at this point. I still think we need like a cooling off period. I know episode 3 to episode 7 was only 10 years, and we were basically at that mark again, but we've had so much from Disney Plus, just so much content out of Star Wars. I would still like these trilogy films, these things connected to the Skywalker saga, even if it's 10, 11, 12, but then somehow not Skywalker saga. Just let it have like a bit of a runway, let it be special, and then once everything is at a nice pace, a nice tempo, and good reception all around, and obviously good profits all around, then I think 10, 11, 12 makes sense. I don't think you should be so ambitious, even if everything is laid out perfectly, to then be like, the first movie after Mandalorian Grogu is 10, 11, and 12. No, I think that's a little terrifying to consider.
Right, especially since it's been so long. It'll be 7 years by the time Mandalorian and Grogu comes out since we've had The Rise of Skywalker. That's not a direction I really thought they would go, but I mean, now I feel like it's more likely than ever that the Rey movie could be a staging ground, almost like a one movie prequel to this trilogy, whether maybe now the Rey movie is, we heard it was 15 years after The Rise of Skywalker. Maybe they move this up and it's in the middle of that gap, and then the trilogy takes place 15 years after. For better or worse, the connectivity, the cinematic universe style is starting to creep over into Star Wars a bit, where we've seen that connectivity between all the Mandalorian projects, all the Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau projects. Now, once again, you have another guy connected to Dave Filoni coming back into the fold. Is there a world here where they start to try to build up maybe new characters, revamp sequel characters, and do it all with 10, 11, 12 as the basis of the story, but very much so in that multimedia initiative way, have the new Jedi Order movies that mainly star Rey, and then you have 10, 11, 12 that star different characters. Then you maybe have spin-offs and different movies across the entirety of this trilogy, and you extend the trilogy. Maybe only one movie comes out every 3, 4 years, 5 years instead of every 2 years, and you give us stuff in between that help build it up. I always expected the Rey movie to be the start of more for that character, but I didn't think it was going to be a one movie prequel and then lead into a trilogy, and I could very much see that being the direction. Now, the only problem with that is I think there's still questions on the table of, does the Rey character still sell Star Wars movies? Does that story still sell Star Wars movies? And if they put all their eggs in one basket and it doesn't do well in the first movie, then now they've got this whole 3-movie plan that might not work out if audiences aren't receptive to it. I think if they make a great movie, the majority of the people out there will go watch it, and it will start to build something new. And I do like the fact that there's a plan. I don't want them to make one movie and go, well, we'll see how it goes, because that's ultimately a recipe for failure. It's the recipe we've seen so often lately. Here's to hoping this actually happens and it's not another project that's canceled. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. Do you think any of our ideas are accurate? Do you have ideas for where you think this could go that you would like to share? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like the video if you haven't subscribed to the channel. If you're new, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you all next time.